The contact resolved at 3:12, and I logged it the way I log everything. Without hurry, without feeling, in the order the fields require. Mass, indeterminate. Bearing, inbound, sector passage 11, the Vethani Reclaimant Transit Corridor we sealed 11 years ago by order of the Continuance Authority. Speed, 3.1 transit increments. No ident beacon. No registry filing. No approach vector on record because whatever this contact was, it had entered the corridor before we built the cordon that was supposed to make entry impossible. I ran the archive query as a matter of procedure. I did not expect a result. The archive returned one match. It returned it in 0.4 seconds, which is fast, and it flagged the entry with a closed notation, which means the matter was resolved and filed and should not require further attention. I read the entry. Hull designation, TES Unbroken Passage, Terran Registry, displacement, 1.9 million units approximately. Hull age at time of last contact, estimated 46 years, which would make the hull 80 years old now. Classification, Deep Transit Survey and Passage Hull Independent Commission. Last known heading, inbound, sector passage 11. Last known speed, 3.1 transit increments. Status, destroyed in transit. Certified by the Reclaimant Authority's own passage warden First Class Yuvith Oron, 34 years ago, case reference 7 passage 11 null, signed and closed. I looked at the contact on my screen. The contact was still there. It was still moving at 3.1 transit increments. It had not read the archive. I called the disposition to general alert and opened a standard transit denial channel on all registered Terran frequencies. This is procedure. The denial order goes out, the contact acknowledges, the contact alters course or holds, we file the interaction and close the day. I have done this 412 times in 11 years at this desk. I issued the denial order at 3:14. I waited for the acknowledgement. The contact did not acknowledge. It continued inbound at 3.1 transit increments. I issued the denial order again. I issued it on every Terran frequency in the catalog, and then on the emergency bands, and then on the decommissioned legacy bands that we are technically required to monitor, but that no hull has used in decades. Nothing. The contact continued inbound. At 3:17, the disposition's lead hull, Passage Warden Intercept 1, moved to minimum challenge range and painted the contact with its full sensor array. The return came back at 3:17 and 40 seconds, and my senior analyst, Sarath Cole, read it aloud, which he does not normally do. He read it aloud because he could not quite believe the numbers on his screen were the correct numbers, and he wanted to hear them in the air, where they might sound more reasonable. Mass, 1.9 million displacement units, confirmed. Hull geometry, elongated transit configuration, approximately 3.1 kilometers on the long axis. Hull surface, heavily weathered, the sensor array's composition reading listed 81 distinct oxidation and thermal scoring patterns, distributed across the hull in a manner consistent with decades of continuous deep transit operation. Engine signature, active nominal output for a hull of this class, fuel consumption rate consistent with a vessel that has not stopped its drives in a very long time. No weapons system signature detected. No crew biosign detected. No active broadcast of any kind. No approach vector. We could calculate where it was now and where it had been 1 hour ago, but the archive had no entry for this hull that was not 34 years old, and the corridor it was traveling had been sealed 11 years ago. We could not determine how it had entered, because it had been here before the sealing, which meant it had been in this corridor for more than 11 years without appearing on our sensors. And the sensor array covers sector passage 11 completely, which means it had been here without appearing, because it had not been emitting enough to resolve as a distinct contact, until it was close enough that even minimum threshold emissions resolved it. It had been moving through our sealed corridor for 11 years or more, in silence, at 3.1 transit increments. Passage Warden Intercept 1 issued a final denial and elevated to interdiction posture at 3:21. The disposition had 440 hulls in Sector Passage 11, which is more than sufficient for a single contact denial. I have watched the disposition manage incursions with 12 hulls. 440 hulls against a 1.9 million unit transit vessel is not an engagement. It is a formality. The engagement lasted 19 minutes. I watched it on the sector display. Intercept 1 opened fire at 3:23, and the rest of the disposition followed within 8 seconds of the lead order, because that is doctrine. You do not let a denied contact reach the inner corridor, and you do not use minimum force when the contact is of unknown registry status and massing nearly 2 million displacement units. The disposition brought everything it had. 440 hulls, coordinated maximum sustained yield across all forward batteries for 19 minutes. At 3:42, the contact speed had not changed. Its heading had not changed. Its output signature had not changed in any measurable way. There were 41 hulls in the disposition still capable of firing. The remaining 399 had lost primary drive or primary power or both. None were destroyed. They were simply no longer in a position to maintain interdiction posture. The contact had not fired a single weapon. It had not maneuvered. It had not acknowledged the disposition's presence in any way that our sensors could detect. It continued inbound at 3.1 transit increments. I had the transit denial form open on my desk. I have been filling out transit denial forms for 11 years, and I fill them out correctly. I know which fields require which entries, and I know the values each field will accept. The form has a field for contact status, and that field accepts 4 values: denied and withdrawn, denied and detained, denied and destroyed, and passage permitted. I moved my cursor to that field and I considered the 4 options. The contact had not withdrawn. The contact had not been detained. The contact had not been destroyed. It was, at 3:44, passing the outer marker of the inner corridor, and it was going to reach the inner boundary in approximately 6 hours at its current speed, and there was nothing left in Sector Passage 11 that was capable of stopping it. I could not select passage permitted, because I had not permitted it passage. I could not select denied and destroyed, because the archive's own entry for this hull said destroyed 34 years ago, and the contact on my screen was proof that the archive was wrong. And if the archive was wrong about the destruction, then entering destroyed a second time in a new form would simply be another wrong entry, another certification of a thing that had not occurred, another official record that the hull would decline to consult. Sarath Cole asked me quietly what he should log as the cause of the engagement. I told him to leave it blank for now. He asked me what he should log as the outcome. I told him to leave that blank as well. I looked at the archive entry one more time. Destroyed in transit. Certified 34 years ago. Case closed. Passage Warden First Class Yuvith Oron had signed it. He had done his job correctly. I was certain of that because we always do our jobs correctly in the Reclaimant Authority. We certify and we close and we file and we move on to the next form. What Yuvith Oron could not have known, when he certified that hull's destruction, was whether the hull had received the notification. Whether the hull, traveling at 3.1 transit increments through the deep corridor, inbound, had somehow been informed that it was destroyed and was therefore required to stop. Whether there was anyone aboard, and our sensors said there was not, or at least nothing our biosign detectors recognized, to read the certification and comply with its terms. Whether the hull had any reason to know that it had ended. I looked at the contact on the sector display. It was still moving. It was moving with the same indifference it had shown the denial order and the disposition's 19 minutes of maximum sustained fire. It was moving because it had been moving for a very long time, longer than our cordon had existed, possibly longer than some of our hulls had existed, and it did not appear to know how to stop, or to have been asked to stop in a language it recognized, or to believe that a certification filed in an archive it had never consulted was sufficient reason to alter its heading. At 3:47, it crossed the outer marker and continued inbound. I left the contact status field blank. I do not have a value for what is currently in sector passage 11. The form's designers did not anticipate the need for one. I am not certain I would know what to call it even if they had. Passage Warden First Class Yuvith Oron certified it destroyed 34 years ago, and he signed the form, and he was correct in every procedural sense, and it did not stop.